HardisonInk090725. This is the State of Florida versus Gerald Michael Abrams Jr. We'll first take appearances on the record, please.
Jared Thomas from the State of Florida.
Robert Tucker from Mr. Abrams.
All right, and the court does note that defendant Gerald Michael Abrams Jr. is present in the courtroom. Mr. Abrams, we're here today set for sentencing. The jury trial was held. The jury convicted on 3 separate counts of attempted second-degree murder on law enforcement officer. The law enforcement officers were Talon Reed. Then we had law enforcement officer Brock Stone, same charge for 3 officers. And the third was Kevin Harden. Is the state prepared to move forward with sentencing?
Yes, ma'am.
Is defense?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, Mr. Abrams, the way that the sentencing hearing is conducted, I'm sure your attorney has advised you, the court will first hear from the state as to any recommended sentence. The victims in the case do have the opportunity to speak if they would like to speak. The state has the opportunity to call other witnesses to speak if they would like to speak, or the state can represent the interests of those victims if they don't wish to speak. The state can speak for them. At the conclusion of the state's presentation of their argument and their witnesses, then you will have the opportunity through your counsel to present witnesses on your defense if you would like for the sentencing. You have the opportunity to speak if you would like to speak. This court will not require you to speak, and I cannot require you to speak. So that will be entirely up to you. And so at this point, I will go ahead and hear first from the state. Mr. Thomas.
Your Honor, I have spoken to the victims in the case, everyone that was there at the scene, and none of them wished to speak. They asked that I speak on their behalf, so the state's not going to present any witnesses or any other evidence, only arguments, which I'm prepared to do at this moment if you'd like, or if you'd rather get if they're presenting witnesses to go first.
If you will just state clearly for the record what the charges are, what the level and maximum penalty is for each of the charges, and then also the required costs that are associated with this, because that won't be in conflict.
Yes, Your Honor. The defendant was found guilty of second-degree murder, or attempted second-degree murder on law enforcement. 3 different counts. 1 count on Kevin Harden, 1 on Brock Stone, and 1 on Talon Reed. All 3 of those, based upon statute 782.065, is a mandatory life sentence. So the defendant's sentence is a mandatory life sentence. The defendant does score a lowest permissible of 324 months in the Department of Corrections. Of course, that is kind of irrelevant. It's moved because it is a mandatory life sentence in this case, Your Honor. The court costs are $418 in court costs. It's a $100 cost of prosecution, a $50 public defender application fee, and if the defense is seeking $500 attorney fee.
Okay. All right, are there any mandatory fines or anything else that go along with 782.065?
No, Your Honor, no mandatory fines.
Okay. All right, and so, Mr. Tucker, at this point, as I explained directly to your client, you are not required to present any evidence, but you are given an opportunity to do so if you choose. Would your client like to present anything today?
Your Honor, I think Mr. Abrams does not wish to address the floor, and we don't have witnesses.
Your Honor, state is prepared, or that's where the court is ready.
All right, and so the court will go ahead then and hear an argument from the state.
Your Honor, as was stated before, this is a mandatory life sentence. On behalf of law enforcement, the people of this community are very proud and thankful that we have people that will go and protect this community, and that's exactly what happened in this instance. There was a call of somebody who had a gun, said they wanted to kill themselves, and they said specifically that you'll know who I am when you get here, there'll be gunfire. And it's the fact that the people of this community don't have to go out there and deal with that we have people that are brave enough that will go out there, have signed up for this very job, to go out and to protect the rest of this community. And I get to sleep well at night, and so does the rest of the community, knowing that we have people that work all night long, all during the day, that are willing to protect and serve, and that's exactly what happened. Even in in the middle of the scene, as you saw on the video, officers are being shot at. When they returned fire, the first thing they did when the defendant was neutralized is they ran up and gave first aid. He stands here today because the officers rendered first aid. They cared about the person, not just the rest of the community, but even the person that tried to bring them harm. And I do believe that shows how good of officers that we have in this very community, how caring they are, and that they did their job. They did their job with all bravery, and they did their job even caring for the one who shot at them. Now, for the rest of their lives, they live with this. This will be etched in their mind. Yet, they still go to work. They still put on a badge, they still wear their gun, and they still go up there and protect us, knowing that this is a real possibility. That every single day when they say goodbye to their families, that this is a real possibility. Not only is it a possibility, but it actually happened to them, and they still go out and do their job. So I feel safe in my community knowing that I have men and women that protect us from these very types of situations. And I do believe that's why the legislature put 782.065, which says it is a mandatory life sentence, because people who are dangerous enough to attack those that are protecting and serving, they've done nothing wrong. They've done nothing wrong. And he shot at them, trying to take their lives. They have families. They have wives. They have children. They have parents. They have friends. They have people in this community that love them. But no, every night that they risk their lives so that we can be safe. Your Honor, so I would ask that you would follow 782.065, which does say there should be a life sentence for the defendant. He should have 3 life sentences for the crimes that he committed.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Tucker.
Your Honor, it's significant that Mr. Abrams was charged with attempted first degree murder. The jury found him guilty of attempted second degree murder. The state sought to prove that Mr. Abrams attempted to take the life of Town Reed and the other officers with premeditation. The jury found that there was no premeditation. There was evidence presented at the trial to indicate that Mr. Abrams was suicidal, and the law enforcement was called out in an attempt to commit suicide by cop. There was testimony from Linda Ogle, there was testimony from Dr. Carlisle. Both testified regarding Mr. Abrams' disturbed state, his health problems, and his severe depression. 782.065 does require a mandatory life sentence in this case. However, if it were not for 782.065, Mr. Abrams had decided to shoot at anybody else, it would be a first degree felony, only because of the 1020 life law. Attempted second degree murder is a second degree felony in most cases. It's only a life felony in this case because of the law enforcement officer element. I'm not going to question the legislature's logic here, but I think as applied to Mr. Abrams, life sentence does not cool any depression. And we're arguing that sentencing Mr. Abrams to life is a violation of the 8th Amendment to the United States Constitution, and it does not cool any unusual punishment. Mr. Abrams is a man who is no disturbed. Mr. Abrams did not have any premeditation to kill anybody, and it was a situation in the heat of the moment. I think there was, he did intend to fire the weapon, but in the heat of the moment, he fired a fire round down range. Town Reed was struck and holstered. But, Your Honor, this applied to Mr. Abrams' life sentence is not proportionate. It is cruel and unusual, and we're requesting 20 years for a state prison, which would be the minimum mandatory under
in the bush with a gun. He fires that gun at the officers. The officers retreat, post up. They come there to help. They come there to help a man who was in distress. But instead of being able to help him, they were fired upon. And this was no accident, as Talon Reed, Officer Reed, was struck. He was shot from a pretty long range. There was intent. And I'm sorry that I failed the officers and maybe not getting the highest of convictions. But the officers didn't fail in any way. They were lured out there, but they were willing to go out there even though they knew that there was a gun, because they knew there was somebody in distress and they knew that there was a community that needed their help. So they went out there. And instead of being able to help someone, they were fired upon. And as was said, when he was neutralized, they did their job valiantly. They gave and rendered aid. They called 911. Until the medics got there, they rendered aid. He stands before you because those men cared enough about human life, the human who tried to kill them. That's why this law is in there. Because it's not just someone that was walking down the road. It was somebody that was called to help. And that's exactly what they came to do. They did a most excellent job with all professionalism. And I'm thankful that they get to go home. That they got to go home that night. But as I said, every single night, they're going to put that badge back on, they're going to put that gun, and this is going to be in the back of their minds. Could it happen again? But they still care enough about this community that they still walk out there and they protect and they serve. That's why we should give thanks to them. And that's why the legislators made this law, saying that he should never be free ever again to do this to anybody.
I thank you. I've heard the arguments of the state. I've heard the arguments of the defense. As I said at the outset, you've been convicted of the crimes that were announced by the state, by the jury. It is not this court's role to go back and reevaluate the facts of this case, but to sentence upon what the finding of the jury was. The finding of the jury was the attempted second-degree murder of a law enforcement officer on those 3 counts. 782.065 does require that there is a mandatory life sentence. The record will reflect that the defendant did argue cruel and unusual punishment, and so his argument as to the applicability under the 8th Amendment of the Florida Constitution and the United States Constitution will be preserved for appeal should you wish to move forward with that. I do agree that the legislature did determine that this is a separate crime that should be charged separately, and that it should be sentenced separately, and that is why that law was enacted. I commend the bravery of the officers that responded to that day. I am thankful that there was no loss of life at the scene of anyone. I do believe that the mandatory life sentence for each of the 3 charges is the appropriate sentence under the law, and so you will be sentenced as follows. There will be $418 in court cost, $100 cost of prosecution, $50 for the public defender application fee. You will be sentenced to life in prison on each of the charges, and so I am required to go over each of those specifically as outlined.
Your Honor, I do have a score sheet if you'd like.
Please bring forward the score sheet, and Mr. Tucker, do you agree to the validity of the score sheet as presented by the state, which had the sentencing was permissible under the score sheet at 324?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, we'll go ahead and sign that score sheet as appropriate. And so for count 1 under the conviction, it will be the life sentence for the attempted murder on law enforcement officer Talon Reed. For count 2, it would be life sentence for the attempted murder on law enforcement officer Brock Stone. And count 3 would be a life sentence for attempted murder on law enforcement officer Kevin Harden. That will be the sentence of the court. Mr. Abrams, you do have the right to appeal the sentence of this court. You have 30 days from the date that the sign it momentarily to be able to file your appeal in this case. If you would like to be represented by the Public Defender's Office on that appeal, you have the right to fill out the application for the Public Defender's Office and for the Public Defender's Office to move forward with that appeal on your behalf. Again, I'm saddened that this event happened. I do commend the bravery of the officers who responded. I think that we're blessed to have valiant men that are willing to respond to dangerous situations. Mr. Abrams, I hope that EMTs, any mental health assistance that you may need, you find in the Department of Corrections. But the purpose of the Florida Sentencing Guidelines is a punishment code. And so those are the punishments that are recommended. Those are the appropriate